I am back. And all I want to say is thank you all for being so patient with me. And I just hope that I will not take that long of a break ever again. But you must be wondering, what's with this current picture? Well, I got another what if idea. It's just gonna be what if Deck had the ability to shadow clone himself. Basically the same thing as an Naruto. But, well, he gains the added bonus of whenever his tones pop, he, gains all their memories back and the added effects that they add on. Which means if they took damage, Izuku will also feel that damage. Well, mentally. Not, physically, just physically. Well, you know what? No, let me cut that out. Basically, his max clones right now is basically 2. Yeah, just 2. So, anyway, and keep in mind Izuku will have one fall on this because I have a great idea. But, anyway, keep in mind, let me say that for later. So, we start off with Midoriya and Todoroki currently facing off with each other. Todoroki still uses the same attack as in canon, and Izuku used the same thing as in canon, with him blasting off and charging one fall in his arm. After a bit of time later, basically, to give a bit of background, Midoriya always had a quirk. It was just dormant and had to be given a little shove to finally activate. One fall did give that shove, but Midoriya, since he didn't know he had a quirk, never really tried to awaken it. So he just kind of thought it was quirkless and accepted that fact. None. But anyway, and everything still happens as well. Basically the same. I'll give him the back on it. But Midoriya, he's training. He's gonna, yeah. But anyway, we now see Midoriya currently. Everything still happens as in canon, with Midoriya still getting sent out of bounds and having a broken arm and broken leg. After a bit of time, we see Midoriya fall unconscious. That's when he suddenly awakens in a black void. He looks around to see, nothing. That is until he feels someone touching his shoulder. He turns around to see a version of himself. This version gives Midoriya a little bit of a shove, and he wakes up. Midoriya is weirded out by this dream, but just sighs and thinks it's nothing. After that, he gets up and decides to go out and train. After a long bit of training, Midoriya, during his time, has been hearing a bit of voices in his head. It is kind of weird to be precise. He woke up, went to get some coffee, and he suddenly heard something whispered to him. Midoriya suddenly shook his head and thought it was nothing. And after that, a lot of weird occurrences happened. But now he's finally outside. Midoriya is currently just doing a little bit of push-ups and everything like that. That is until, he slips on something and falls to the ground. That is until he suddenly feels someone grabbing his t-shirt. Before he reached the ground, Midoriya looks up to see the same version of him. Midoriya obviously gets pushed back up, gets held back up, and asks this person or thing what they are. That is until this person suddenly says, "I am you." And then it poofs in a cloud of smoke. Midoriya getting a weird feeling in his head and shaking it and saying probably, that was weird. we after that now see Midoriya finally well trying to do the same thing that happened with him. Well, just trying to throw up weird signs. He doesn't know why he's doing this and just decides to sigh and go to the internet. He looks around until he sees something familiar. He he just sees a Naruto video actually. It was showing Naruto just creating a clone with the cross hands on. Midoriya obviously seeing the clone poof in the same white cloud of smoke that thing did was someone. He gets up and goes outside and does the same thing. That's when another version of him, that's when the same cloud of smoke appears right in front of him. After the cloud disposes, he sees the clone. Joey obviously screaming and being weirded out, saying he didn't actually think that would work. That is until the clone once again poofs and Midori again feeling that same weird jittery feeling in his head again. Midori throwing up the same hand sign again and the same thing happening. Midori obviously being a little bit more calm and collected a bit more, thinks this is his real quick awakening. Or is it a part of one fall? He just shakes his head and decides not to think on that a lot. After that, he decides to just go to bed and tell All Might about this. Him sleeping and waking up the next day. After a bit of more time, we see him finally, most time with classes and everything that after it all passes, it's finally lunchtime. He gets up and walks up. That is until the same thing happens with All Might doing the same weird poses. Him saying he's hearing of his opposition. Midori obviously being weirded out by this and sighing and asking to speak in All Might in private. That's when All Might says he just wants to ask him to eat with him. Midori says perfect and goes with All Might. That is until we now see them in a room. With Midori, obviously telling All Might about the weird experience he had. All Might, in his skinny form, asks him to do the same thing. Midori doing it, and another version appears of him beside him. All Might obviously being, pretty weirded out by this and gains a thought. Is he working with All For One? That is until, Midori is way too pure-hearted for that. And just, thinks this is, quick awakening. He tells, he has to go to a recovery girl to see if, this is his quirk. Midori, shaking his head and saying, yeah. And, not yet. After a bit of time, they finally reach recovery girl. Them starting to explain about everything that happened. Recovery girl obviously nodding along and saying that she'll look into it. Hold on. Anyway. We now see Midori, finally gaining a bit of background. Recovery girl telling him that he can basically create clones of himself, and whenever they poof, like in the white cloud, he gains the knowledge that everything they did. Midori obviously brightening up and deciding to go test out his cloak. Midori quickly runs outside and creates a not really, what kind of that? We see Midori brighten up and asking if that's all. The recovery girl saying yes, and if anything other, and Recovery Girl asking if there's anything else he needs to come to for her. Midoriya nodding and here's the bell ring. Midoriya saying that's the bell and gets out of his seat and walks towards his class. Well, he looked calm and collected in that situation. He was totally freaking out. Well, after reaching class, he immediately gets out his notebook and decides, sorry for the long silence, and decides to start scribbling down all the ideas for this, everything that he can do with it. After a bit of scribbling, he thinks that, well, what if one helps him control One for All a bit? We now see Midoriya suddenly gain that same bright smile on his face, and waited for the rest of the day. Him mainly being focused on everything that his quirk can do. After a bit of time, Midoriya is now finally back at home. Him creating a clone, and obviously the clone seeing Midoriya tells the clone to start focusing on One for All. The clone it starts charging One for All through its arms, and the clone obviously not being told what to exactly do, he's just activating One for All. It's starting to spread a little bit up his arm. Midoriya obviously being weirded out by this and decides to see where this goes. The clone still not knowing what to do with this current energy flowing through his arm, just let's go and keeps charging up One for All. That is until it rapidly starts going through the clone's body again. This clone suddenly, the One for All line is just completely disappearing and the lightning surrounding the clone. Midoriya obviously, Kim quickly seeing this, smiles and suddenly the clone poofs. Seeing, that there's nothing else he needs to do, since, he was only told to charge up One for All. Midoriya smiles and tries to do the same thing. Him just charging One for All in his arms, then it going through his body, to his legs, and then his face. It disappearing and lightning surrounding him. Midoriya smiles and decides to create another clone. 2 clones appearing this time. Midoriya obviously seeing this, remember the time that All Might said, it will enhance your quirk. Midoriya thinking about this obviously thinks that, this is the part where it enhances his quirk. He tells them to do the same thing he did, and they start doing it. Lightning surrounding the 2 clones. Midoriya, obviously wondering what this new thing can do, asks them to just do a bit of sprints. That's what they do, and Midoriya is seeing that his speed is a bit enhanced. Him telling them to jump a bit. Them doing this, and basically him just just being excited by this, tells them to poof. They disperse in a cloud of white smoke, and we now see Midoriya. Him currently jumping up and down, excited about what his new quirk can do. We now see Midoriya currently looking at a wall and running at it. Him doing the same thing over and over again, that it didn't Gran Torino. Midoriya, after failing a bit, finally gets this jumping from wall to wall thing down. Him reaching the top of a building and being exhausted. Midoriya sighs and the lightning disposes. Midoriya decides, that's enough training for today, and looks down and sees that it's currently up at our building. Midoriya, being beat and being scared and not knowing what to do. He looks around again, and that's where I'm gonna leave it off. Bye.